Reaperman here, and today I have the most primitive version of Virtua Racing, the Sega Genesis version, also probably the most historically important, I would say. This is actually the second one that I played because I already had the Virtua Racing Deluxe on 32X and really enjoyed that. I still remember when I got this, so I used to shop at the Video Game Exchange in Madison, Wisconsin, and one day the owner actually had this one kind of set aside, it seemed like mostly for me, because he knew I'd want to get it just because it's a curiosity, and I always really like those. So as you can see, I'm on my big old mass stick here. I might actually shoot a separate video about the mass stick. But I'm also on the Kevtris's Mega SG. And this is one of the few times I actually use that. I've got a full tower of power with a custom power supply and custom 32X wiring and, well, I suppose a custom SCART cable. So the Mega SG really doesn't do a good job of keeping up with that, but I will use it for this game specifically because I'm never going to remove that 32X. Once you get one of those put in place, you pretty much leave it there. It's I'm not going to call it fragile, but it can be temperamental to get working. And once it's where it goes, you just kind of leave it there. You know, you clean everything, and I think I actually have the little metal ground flaps in that supposedly are completely unnecessary, but I have them there anyway, just in case they knock down some of the RF noise. Just kind of tie the grounds together. Anyway, this version of the game, they all handle a little differently, all the Virtua Racings. But this one I suck at the most, as you can see from my lap times up there. I really struggle to get into the high 39s on laps on this game. The frame rate is a little bit lower than any other version that I've played, but I suppose that's par for the course. I can still see what's going on, although my first couple of times around this track, this is my kind of home track in the game. I think it's everybody's favorite track. I've actually had to jump out to the high just to see where the cues are for the corners, and now I've pretty much got them down though, so I don't have to keep doing that. Whoop, get around the corner here. The game's actually got a puker cam if you want to jump down into that mode, which nobody does. Do a quick lift here to try and keep that one low. It's not great. But I tend to get about second, third, or fourth in this game, and that's about where my skill level should put me. So even though my lap times are a little bit worse in this game, place-wise, I come in exactly where I should. This first corner is generally wide open, so is the second one. This third corner should also be wide open. Try and stay on the outside, and gonna have to lift a little on this one to keep from going wide and setting up for the next one. And this last corner is really tricky as always, and I spun out. That kind of sucked. But anyway, fourth place is about what I can expect. Now, this game came out to compete with Star Fox, at least on the Playground. I can't remember which version actually came out first, or which game actually came out first. But they are both well into the realm of making your 16-bit system do something it shouldn't do by putting a processor in the cartridge. And yes, this does have replay. We will just engage the replay here. Or we won't, because apparently I need to use the C button for that, so I guess we'll play again. One thing, though, that Star Fox didn't have to deal with, that this one did, was the lower color count on the system, and this game deals with that by using a lot of dithering, and it's fairly apparent. You can see it up in the sky, in the trees, in the car, everywhere. And that little checkerboarding pattern was just kind of meant to get kind of blurred together on your CRT using whatever awful version of video delivery you were expected to use back then, whether it was composite or even RF was very common back in those days. Still, this game does a good job at being more than what the Saturn, or the Genesis should be able to do. Now, there are actually a couple other Genesis 3D racers out there. I think Domark had a couple, and they're pretty good. Also, kind of Formula One or open wheel themed. And I might actually do a video on those, because those are a little bit meatier game than this, in that they have a lot more tracks and they have a lot longer tournaments and such. Seasons, I guess you would call it. Lift up. You'd think I'd be a lot better at this track by now. And one thing I should do is I should actually do a review of the Switch version, because the Switch version, as you might expect, me being me, was the killer app that finally got me to pull the trigger on the Nintendo Switch. And it's actually the racing game I have the most time with on that system. Ugh, that didn't look very good. So as always with Virtua Racing, the music is limited to little kind of checkpoint jingles, which I guess that's okay. There are some voice samples in the background, but very few of them. And of course, being Sega Genesis, they aren't the highest quality voice samples in the world. I would have to say, though, that even though the frame rate is the choppiest on any Virtua Racing, it is still quite playable, especially when you compare it to the frame rate of something like Checkered Flag on the Jaguar, which there's no good reason for that game to be as bad as it is. Anyway, when this game came out, as I mentioned, it was kind of a special cartridge in that it had that SVP chip, or Sega Virtual Processor. I don't remember exactly how much it was, since I didn't actually have a Sega at that point in my life. But if I recall, this was a $100 plus game. At least that's what the legend says. So this was, early 90s. This was about as extreme as you could get for a 3D experience here. Well, I might be talking out my butt a bit on that one. I'm not sure exactly when the Genesis version came out. It's entirely possible there were some other polygon racers out there at the time, but this actually performed very well. And this is back when 30 FPS was kind of a pipe dream, much less 60, so that's why it's choppy. If I had to guess, it's probably running at, I don't know, 10 to 15 FPS. Okay, so somehow I managed to do a little worse in time than I did on my first one. I almost managed to hit 39, though. I could probably have gotten that if I wasn't attempting to be somewhat entertaining. But we will actually check out the replay mode. Maybe check out some of those other cameras. Yes, please, instant replay. So as always with Virtual Racing, you start out at kind of a pit start. And I've never tried it, but I'm sure you can pit in. Like other versions of Virtual Racing, there's really no reason to do that except to watch the guys wrench on your car. I don't believe this game features any damage or even tire wear. That's how the Switch version uses the pitting in, is to get rid of tire wear. This bridge is especially poorly dithered. That's almost a little bit of a shame. And when this game is actually doing some of the longer angles, then you start to really see the pop in, which I'm sure is probably noticeable while I'm driving, but it tends to keep at least the track where I'm looking located. So this is one of those games where you're really looking at just kind of a narrow sliver on the horizon of about 12 pixels and trying to divine which way the track goes based on those 12 pixels, so it can be a little bit of a challenge. Wonder if my buttons actually switch cameras and such. Doesn't seem like it. Now, I'm not going to hit it here, but if you don't know, with Virtua Racing, you can actually soft reset the game from the controller with A, B, C, and start together. That's pretty good for chickening out on a race after you've completely ruined it or something, which especially on this version of the game does happen quite a lot. Gosh, I can't get over the more I play this game, the better it starts looking. But then every once in a while, my brain will remember what Virtual Racing Deluxe looked like, and then this starts looking a little bad again. But I can't believe they got this frame rate back then. This is actually really nice. There are some arcade trackside objects that are missing from this track. There is kind of a field by the last, I guess the penultimate corner there, that is missing some obstacles in it. Now, I know on some versions of the game you can skate through it. It's not something I personally do, so I don't know if this version does that as well. I imagine the people interested in high scores, though, aren't really interested in the Genesis version of this game. I would just like to keep that to Switch. Alright, so here we are, coming up on the last corner in the second to the last lap. Looks like I poked myself into third there for a bit. If you notice, there's some polygon warping on the edge of the screen, and they didn't correct that perspective, which probably saves a little bit on SVP utilization and keeps the frame rate up a bit. I know the early PlayStation games are notorious for leaving that kind of edge distortion in. Oh, C did pop me to an overhead camera, so they aren't the... okay, C changes the camera instead of X, Y, and Z, which actually changed the camera in the main game. Alright, so here we are coming up on the last corner of the last lap. And there we go. That's Virtual Racing on the Sega Genesis. Reaper Man out.